Matt Gilmore sitting in for Aaron Rand. It's time, Wednesday, so it's time to check in with Carmi Levy, a tech analyst for CTV. Hey, Carmi.
Hey, Matt. So good to be with you.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it. Love talking with Carmi Levy. You sent over some topics this morning, and we'll start with what we know about who's buying TikTok in the U.S.
Yeah, this is just the weirdest thing because Donald Trump, U.S. president, last week signed an executive order that was supposed to approve the deal. In other words, open the door for a deal to be finalized. It wasn't actually the deal itself. I'm not quite sure why this needed an executive order, but I guess it did. Good circus in Washington. So
never leave an opportunity to sign an executive order on the table, Carmi. That's
exactly.
That's
really
presidenting 101,
right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just Trump being Trump. And so from what we can tell, it looks like it's going to be kind of a group of U.S. investors, what J.D. Vance calls blue chip investors or top tier investors. So Larry Ellison, who's the CEO of Oracle, he leads the group. Rupert Murdoch and his son Lachlan, they had Fox News, of course. Michael Dell, who founded Dell Computer. And then the equity firm Silver Lake, which is very prominent in Silicon Valley. And this one was interesting, MGX. It's a venture capital firm based in Abu Dhabi. So, I mean, I thought this was about American ownership, but I'm guessing they're letting the folks from Abu Dhabi in as well. They're going to own about 80% of the company. ByteDance, which is, of course, the company that currently owns all of TikTok, they're going to own just under 20%. According to the law, they're allowed to own up to 20%. So it doesn't completely push it out of China. China will still be involved. They do say the algorithm is going to be licensed from ByteDance, and then this new American ownership group, they're going to take the algorithm and they're going to update it. They're going to cut it off from Chinese control and make it all American. Put a big old American flag on it. But what's interesting here is that executive order was signed a week ago tomorrow, so last Friday. And we haven't heard boo from China. Of course, China has to approve all of this. And they have literally said nothing, not even, we're going to make an announcement at some point. It's absolute radio silence. And we know that China has been fairly resistant to this all along. So, again, this is one of those cases where it doesn't feel, something feels off. Because if we had a deal, it would have been signed. Everyone would have gathered around. It would have been done. Donald Trump keeps making these excuses to get in front of the cameras, make these announcements, but we don't actually get to the finish line, and I'm wondering if we ever will.
Okay, so we'll still wait and see on that one. But just so we're clear, this does not involve or mean anything for the TikTok that we here in Canada use, right? It's a separate thing, or are we impacted by this?
This is America only. So only if you're based in the U.S., it will affect you. This is so all American users will get a new American version of the app, and Canada, as well as the rest of the world, we will continue to use what's known as the global version of TikTok, the same version that we have now, and it'll use the algorithm that it currently uses. And so we're not directly affected here. There are 14 million Canadians who use it, but what's interesting is a lot of our followers here in Canada are based in the U.S. And so if the U.S. version of TikTok isn't as good as the current version, that audience engagement will probably drop off, and it won't be as worthwhile. It won't be as viral. And so if a good chunk of our audience here in Canada kind of disappears, the experience won't be as much fun as it has been. And if you're a Canadian business that uses TikTok to maybe sell to American customers, or you're an influencer and a lot of your audience is based in the U.S., that's going to leak across the border as well. So, the app itself doesn't change, but the experience, well, if it gets lousy in the U.S., that's going to creep into Canada too.
All right, we'll spare a thought for the TikTok influencers. I guess the whole idea behind this thing is to keep it so that the Americans' data doesn't filter out to the Chinese government, right? But then on the other side, but then right away, now there's this $55 billion deal where the Saudis are going to take over Electronic Arts, which means they're going to own Madden, the NHL games, the FIFA games, which I think are called FC now. But these are really popular games, and again, require these companies to have back-end access to your devices. So, these two things are happening at the same time.
Exactly, and it really does show that politically, they score some PR points by saying this is about national security, this is about keeping data out of the hands of foreign interests, and keeping it here, protecting consumers. But the sad reality is, if they really cared about protecting consumers, those apps would be shut down entirely. If the issue about TikTok was data security and keeping it away from the Chinese government, well, they would be going through the Google and Apple app stores and getting rid of all of the Chinese-sourced apps that do exactly the same thing that TikTok does. That is not the case. And so the Electronic Arts buyout is huge, $55 billion, potentially the biggest leveraged buyout in history, and most definitely the biggest game buyout in history. And so this is seismic. What is concerning about it is that Saudi Arabia has something called the Public Investment Fund, or the PIF. And that's designed for them to kind of diversify their interests beyond petroleum. And they are one of the leading players in this deal. And the other player that's also raising eyebrows is Affinity Partners, which, of course, is headed by none other than Jared Kushner. So, there's some pretty clear sort of, maneuvering here, interests that are friendly to the U.S. government, both TikTok as well as EA, bringing in foreign investors who may or may not have get their hands on the data that's collected from all of these apps, all of these games. And it kind of makes you wonder, sort of what really is going on. Does the U.S. government want to have interest in these companies? They bought a 10% interest in Intel a few weeks ago as well. And so, there's definitely a trend that's playing out here. It's something I've got my eye on because they say that it's about, data integrity. It really isn't. And deals like this could mean that the games that we all know and love, at some point, they may be different because now the new owners, possibly from Saudi Arabia, may not be happy with certain themes in games. Let's say that you're playing The Sims and there may be, a representation of the LGBTQ community. That may not be present in future versions if the new ownership structure goes through after the company goes private. So definitely something to watch for, definitely a concern.
Carmi, remember when the tech conversations used to be about fun new technology?
I kind of miss those days because most of the time it seems to revolve around, politics sticking its ugly head into the tech space, cyber insecurity, artificial intelligence. It's become very dystopian and dark over the last couple of years, and I often find myself sitting and looking for stories that sort of remind us back of those early days when technology was magical and it could do no wrong.
Okay, what are these IXI autofocus glasses then?
These are really cool. So this comes to us from Finland, and basically what they are is they're glasses that they track your eye movements, so they know what you're looking at any given moment, and they adjust the focus. It's basically like autofocus for your camera, but on your glasses. And so, of course, this has huge implications for people with vision problems. If you have very complex lenses, this is a technology that can really improve your vision. What's especially cool about this is it's not absolutely new technology. We've seen this in prototypes out of labs before. What's different about this one is it doesn't make you look like a member of the board. You don't look like sort of this sci-fi robot wearing these like really strange contraptions on your nose. Instead, they look like a regular pair of glasses. You plug them in to charge them overnight. They last all day, and they're in terms of pricing, they say they'll be relatively affordable, so around the cost of a high-end pair of glasses. So think in the perhaps high hundreds, low thousands instead of 5 or 6 figures, which is what current prototypes cost.
And
so
this is
definitely something to keep an eye on because I wear glasses. I know my eyes are getting worse. I'm not alone. Technology like this could be a game changer for a lot of people.
Is this an alternative to like a prescription lens?
It is, and it's more adaptive.
As your eyes get worse.
Exactly. So if you think of a prescription lens, it's a point in time. Like I've had my glasses for a few years. I know that my prescription is no longer powerful enough, and I know I need to get new glasses. Whereas if it were software based, if it were just this autofocus glasses, well, then the software would just adapt to my eyes as they continue to change over time, and I wouldn't have to keep replacing my glasses every couple of years as my eyes worsen. The software would just accommodate that.
Really interesting. Thanks, Carmi. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Matt. Great being with you.
Yeah, good to talk to you too. That's Carmi Levy, CTV tech analyst.
The biggest songs in the world. You've heard them countless times. Now, learn the details of how they came to be. Join Ruby Carr for Encore, the stories behind the songs you love. New interviews and newly unearthed archive footage make for a fascinating weekly deep dive. Stream Encore, the stories behind the songs you love on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts.